Oscar-nominated actor and matinee idol, whose career spanned 6 decades and included more than 120 films, Tony Curtis was Hollywood gold. He had a playboy image, but also had a serious side and a self-awareness that made him a chat show favourite. He was candid and talked openly about his life in television interviews. This frankness and wry humour made him box office for the small screen audience.
I didn't play my cards laid back, if you know what I mean. You know?
Right.
You know, I let it all hang out, if you'll excuse the vernacular.
Yeah.
I've come through a very serious illness. I'm an alcoholic and have a drug addiction, and this really almost killed me.
We begin with an interview in 1968 for the programme How It Is, on location for the film Monte Carlo or Bust.
Highest paid man on the set is Tony Curtis. Things have changed from the early days in Hollywood when he was known as the Baron of Beefcake and made some films he'd sooner forget. Now he's a superstar. He chooses his own parts and has some control over working conditions.
That when you're not really aware of your craft, if you don't really know what you're doing, why, you just do it. Nothing disturbs you. But as you begin to realize the subtleties of it, as I have slowly begun to realize the subtleties of acting, why, I find that now I like to do it in as private a environment as possible. I don't like tourists watching. I don't like visitors on the set when I do certain scenes. You know, I need the proximity and the closeness of my co-workers, you know, because it is like making love to me, and it's something that's very private, and I don't like to share it. I remember during the war years, I was in the submarine service, and we used to run movies, and we ran Gunga Din quite a bit, and I always played Cary Grant.
You played him?
Yes, we used to shut off the sound you see in the film, and everybody would take different sounds. Someone would play Joan Fontaine, Douglas Fairbanks Jr. Someone else would make the elephant noises. Someone play the pistol shots. I always played Cary Grant.
Can you remember any lines?
Oh, yes. Out of my way, McChesney. Out of my way. I remember almost all the dialogue. I just wanted my option picked up every 6 months and pick up that $4,000. I just wanted to make the 12 grand a year and get out of there, you know? That was my whole purpose of wanting to be around. Yeah. It's great here. Don't you love it here? Man, it's unbelievable.
Then we asked him about his movie idols.
Oh, Cary Grant is, Errol Flynn was, Jimmy Cagney, Humphrey Bogart. They all were. There isn't one actor of that period, Clark Gable, Leslie Howard, that didn't have some kind of an effect on me as a child, because each one provoked a different kind of response in me. Some days you'd feel kind of depressed over something, and you'd feel if you were as tough as Humphrey Bogart was, life would be a little easier, or as elegant as Cary Grant, or whatever, you know.
Once again, Curtis paid homage to the stars who inspired him in the first of his interviews with Michael Parkinson in 1972.
Well, who were your heroes in those days, Tony? Who were the great sort of screen idols?
Well, to me, any guy that made it in the movies was a hero to me. Because how you could take somebody and make him a movie actor was incredible. I didn't even know the mechanics of it. I just saw them. Cary Grant, Clark Gable, Jimmy Cagney, Humphrey Bogart, you know. I mean, really great. And the actors Burt Lancaster, Kirk Douglas, Frank Sinatra. I've worked with these people, you know, Yul Brynner. These are wonderful people that I've been able to, Jack Lemmon, work with, Sidney Poitier, you know, and really an incredible amount of actors that I've worked with. And I find that to be part of that family, to be part of that profession, is about as nice as I can have it.
And yet, you see, I mean, it wasn't all sort of. Stop tapping my notes. It wasn't all. It wasn't all roses, was it, with you when you first started? Because in fact, you were processed in a rather sort of callous way, weren't you?
Hollywood in those days was like an envelope, and in this envelope, everything was fed. When some young person came along to get started in pictures, he was signed by a studio and immediately assigned to the publicity department. Then they decide to change a name or whatever, try to figure out a gimmick to kind of dangle in front of an audience and say, oh, I got to go see that girl with the big knockers. Or I got to see that guy with the long hair. Or I got to see that horse. Or I got to see that cat or that dog. And anything to draw an audience into the theater. And they needed that, and that's the way they built players. But they also assigned you or introduced you to agents, to business managers, to attorneys. And before you know it, you had 37 people working for you. And you're making $28.60.
As bad as that?
Yeah, right. And I find now that the least people running your business, the better.
Yeah.
You know? Have the minimum amount of people doing it for you.
Yeah.
You know, I recommend that to a lot of actors and actresses, you know.
Yeah. What was the breakthrough for you, Tony, in Hollywood? The thing that made people take you seriously as an actor?
I had, I think well, it was just the quality of the films. That's all that changed. You know, in those early pictures I worked in, I did as good a job as I could at that age. So they weren't bad performances, you know, or even bad pictures. What I needed was a quality film to get it step out of the universal films that I was making, which critics and some people put in a B or C category, which was okay, because I didn't care. I obviously had an audience in those days because they wanted to see me in pictures, and that's all I cared about. I felt that affinity to the audience that paid to go see me in the movies. The critic who said he liked me or didn't like me, up his. I mean, I didn't care.
Yeah.
What have I got in common with some critic sitting somewhere writing, saying, well, I rather didn't like the way he performed. You know, somebody must have liked it. I was getting paid.
Yeah, yeah.
So I figured the best thing to do was to pay no attention to any of that kind of criticism, to just learn my work on the floor from other actors, from, you know, people in the job itself. And that was my purpose, and that's all I tried to do in those early days, you know. And, you know, before you know it, it's 25 years, 24 years later. It's incredible to me. I feel like I'm starting today, and I've done it for 25 years already.
Who did you particularly learn from in those days, Tony? Who was the actor or actress that you watched most of all and admired most of all?
Well, at the beginning, I liked Cary Grant very much, and I still do. But then as I started to watch the other actors work, I realized each one had his own very special way of bringing a little magic to each moment that he played. And that's the name of the game, you know. That's the ball game for me.
Yes.
How each person can bring his own little imperfections that kind of fill out a scene, if you know what I mean. It's like blowing up a balloon. It gives it a three-dimensional quality. You know, you see the people's weaknesses, their strengths, beside the dial. You see, what you have to avoid is acting. You mustn't act. The words do the acting, you know. When the guy says, I love you, I mean, that's acting. I love you. I've transmitted some information. That's not acting to me. You know, that's just a matter of reading a line well. A lot of people imagine, and for years have always thought, and rightly so, that Shakespeare was a wonderful tool to work in, you know. But it's very restricting, you know, and you are bringing to those parts really the author's intent, which is very strong and powerful. But some actors can bring those little unfinished moments that give it a mystery that I'm sure Shakespeare meant at the beginning. And I think that's what acting should be. Things unsaid, you know, left unsaid.
You did, of course, and still do, for all I know, a marvelous impersonation of Cary Grant.
Now you always do Cary Grant.
That's right, yeah.
Everywhere I go. As a matter of fact, I think everybody does Cary Grant.
You did him in Some Like It
Yes,
Hot. It was one of my favourite movies.
Yeah, thank you.
That was a super film. Which is starting with
Marilyn,
with
yes.
Marilyn.
Marilyn Monroe, Jack Lemmon, Joey Brown.
How was Marilyn?
She was very, very difficult.
Was she?
Yeah, really. Really very difficult working.
Why?
Her personal madnesses were so destructive that it made her unhappy and anyone that surrounded her. Consequently, it cost her her life. And it had nothing to do with the picture business.
You think not? Do you
Not
think
at
no
all.
matter what she'd
Not
have
at
done,
all.
she'd have destroyed herself?
Billy Wilder, who directed Some Like It Hot, said she was a mean 7-year-old girl. And I've got a feeling that's about as good a description of Marilyn as
Yes.
any, you know.
Yes.
And, well, she could bring to a scene a lot of power. See, she had a lot of power,
Yes.
you know.
Yes.
But it was difficult for her to put them together, to make moments last, you know.
Yes.
Takes would be 35 and 40 takes for one
Good
line
God.
or two lines. And Billy Wilder said to Jack Lemmon and I when we started the picture, he said, now look, he says, soon as Marilyn gets it right, whenever, he said, that's the shot I'm going to print. Well, Lemmon and I would get in the morning at 7:38 in the morning. We'd get in our trusses, getting our silk stockings, getting all the undergarments, into the makeup department, 45 minutes makeup, 25, 30 minutes hairdressing. By the time we got done, it was 2.5 hours. We'd get on the set, ready to shoot at 9, and she wouldn't show up till 11:30, 12. And there we were in these shoes. And we'd try to find places to sit down, kick off our shoes, put them on. You know, we had to stay like that all day long. And then finally, Marilyn would show up. And we'd go and rehearse it a couple of times. And she'd say, I'm ready. Well, we had to do it. You know, we'd come clobbering in, trying to get our makeup in order because we have to look fresh. And we've been like that now for 12 hours or something. Ridiculous one, you know. And we'd do the scene, and Jack, in one of the takes, tripped. Just stumbled. Well, we printed it. Marilyn came in, did it right, and he said, cut, print. That's right. So you see the picture. What isn't there an army expression that you go as slow as the weakest man?
That's right.
Yeah. And you know, that's tough when your mind wants to get it done. You don't want to spend all your life making one movie, if you know what I mean. You know, a movie is made and you close it and you put it on a shelf and that's it. And you look at it maybe 5, 6 years later or whenever you see it. It shouldn't become a way of life to you. That's used to be the weakness of Hollywood, I felt.
Yes, yes.
You see, they made everything so dependent on each other that people were knocked off left and right and no one cared because they said, well, the stakes are high. It should never have been, you know. But maybe it helps. Maybe it makes people a little bit fruitier than they would have been, which gives them that little extra wanting to be successful, you know.
A little extra drive.
Yes, that little extra, that last minute, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's fascinating. That was a fascinating anecdote about Monroe. What an extraordinary way to have to work, though. You know, with a finger up your nose and that's it, print it because she's got it right. You know?
Right, you know, I think it's I've never forgiven the system for that. Not only for me, but I think for other actors as well. That's a very bad thing to do, you know, where no one's considered except one person. They've got them so psyched out that whatever that one person does has got to be good for everybody else. It's not true. Shouldn't be, you know.
Yeah.
When I get on a set in the morning, the only guy I listen to that gives instructions is the director, right? And everybody around me, we're all part of the same group. There can be no other games played. And anytime actors come in and play those star games, they're the one that only disrupt their own working ability because the next time it's not that easy to get a job, you know.
When Curtis returned for another chat with Parkinson in 1978, his star was on the wane, but his reputation as that chat show gold was enduring.
Well, when you got to Hollywood, though, I mean, did you, when you went there as a young, sort of aspiring actor, did you in fact have to do a lot of hustling? Did you have to play the company game to get parts?
Sure.
And this? You did. What was it?
I did all of it, you know.
What was that like? Tell
Well,
me.
I quickly surmised or kind of figured out what I thought, Michael, was necessary for me to become successful. Because once I got out there, I realized that I was allowed in and no one was going to get me out, you know, because I looked around and I saw all the people surrounding me and I didn't see anyone that was better or worse than I. You know, I found myself amongst many ignorant people. And I, being an ignorant person at the time, felt that I had as much chance as anyone else. But you had to play the game. You had to find a way of influencing the people around you to use you a bit more than someone else. And the way you did that was by observation, to see what the mores and the requirements were for you. And you quickly decided what you were willing to do and what you were willing not to do. And each one of us, I speak of myself at that time with maybe 1,500 young players. I speak now only of actors and actresses. I'm sure this process works for everybody, writers, directors, and in the movies, and also I'm sure in other professions. I decided quickly where I felt I should put the emphasis and what I should de-emphasize, you know? I found everybody used to poke themselves and they said, wait till you hear the way this guy talks. You're gonna love it. You know, here comes the gangster. I mean, you know, they like that New York sound, so I just embellished it. I made it sound even tougher than it did, you know? And if I felt I was in a circle of people that didn't like it so much, I'd tone it down. But I did realize that I must improve myself.
In what way improve yourself?
In every way. In understanding of human behavior, in my own understanding of myself, in my relationship with women, this was beginning for me. You know, I joined the Navy when I was 16 and a half. And with the exception of Sweet Anne, who I mentioned to you before, there were very few women that I knew, or girls I knew, you know. And
But you were a very beautiful young man,
yes,
weren't
but
you?
that doesn't help you, pal, if you don't have a nickel in your pocket. That and a nickel will get you on any subway, right?
So you found yourself, you had more passes made at you by fellas than women, did you?
Well, possibly,
Yeah.
but I found that I was very attracted to women, you know, but I found that it didn't help, you know, that you could create a relationship, and for me it was very important to be in the arms of somebody soft and fragile and gentle, and while I was trying to sort that out for myself, I was trying to create a career for myself, and at the same time improve myself in my speech, my behavior. I realized that my manners needed to be toned down a bit, that I needed more experience of living, an understanding of foods, how to dress, what to say, what not to say, you know. There are a lot of funny, subtle things that go on in growing up.
What about, though, when you were, again, back in these early days when you were sort of, I mean, you, in fact, didn't struggle for all that long, did you, really? Because you very shortly got picked up and became a very, very big star almost overnight, didn't you?
Well, I got there in the summer of '48, and by the summer of '50, which were 2 years, my first 2 years were 6-month options. I started off at $50 a week, then went to 75, 100, 125, and then 150. And by that time, I had worked in 16 movies, Michael. I went from one movie to another, bit parts here and there, you know. But an audience seemed to be somewhat attracted to me, knock wood. And I found myself getting bigger and better parts, you know. And before 18 months were over, I got my first lead in the movies. So it was quite quick for me, you know. I didn't have to work or struggle as much as some other actors.
But you were very much presented in those days, weren't you, as the beefcake, as I said, as
Yes.
the you know, very attractive young sex symbol and this sort of thing. Did you have any problems with ladies then? Nice problems, I mean.
Yes, I did. Well, I wouldn't say problems. I found that I was sought after in a way, but little did they know I was sorting after them more than they were sorting after me. I didn't play my cards laid back, if you know what I mean. You know?
Right.
You know, I let it all hang out, if you'll excuse the vernacular.
Yeah. I could ask for a demonstration, but
Please.
yeah. But I mean, during this time, when you were doing all this, did the studio, in fact, try to process you and package you as a sex symbol?
Yes.
They did. What
Yes.
sort of things did they do to you?
Well, I'd go out on tour. They'd send me out on tours with pictures I wasn't even in. I couldn't understand that at all.
Really?
Audie Murphy would make a film, or Scott Brady, and I find myself on road selling that picture. And I'd go to different theaters, and a lot of young women would be there, girls, you know, for autographs from me. And what the studio used to do was they made me some suits that were basted only. And they'd get some of the girls that worked at the local distributor of Universal in San Francisco, St. Louis, Chicago, Philadelphia, whatever city I was traveling in, and they'd rig these girls that when I came out of the theater, they'd pull that sleeve, and that whole sleeve would come off, and they'd tear my clothes off, shirt, tie, and everything, and they'd, luckily enough, quotation, they'd have a cameraman there, take pictures of it. Young actor, had his clothes torn off, anything to create some attraction, to attract attention, I should say.
What did you feel about it at the time when you were doing it?
Well, I loved it. I said, listen, anyone. I was so surprised that people were interested in helping me become a star.
Yes.
Well, in film. I couldn't imagine why, you know?
Yes.
Not that I didn't think that, as I said before, I was very practical about it, and I felt that I had as good a chance as anyone else. But in the final analysis, I just couldn't. Well, perhaps they saw in me a chance to, you know, that it wouldn't be as difficult, and perhaps they saw that I wasn't a difficult person to be around. That helped too, I think.
How much, Tony, in your private life did the studio interfere? I mean,
Quite
how
a
much
bit.
it did?
Yes, quite a bit.
I mean, for instance, I think I'm right in saying that your marriage to your first wife, Janet
Yes.
Leigh, that they disapproved of that, didn't they?
Well, they acted as if they didn't like it at the beginning. What the motive of that was, I still haven't figured out. Because I realized that after we were married, they couldn't wait to rush us into pictures together, you know, because they were exploiting that. maybe the word exploit isn't the proper word, but it certainly didn't bother them, you know. I'm sure there was some, I remember there was some opposition to it by 2 or 3 people at the studio who said, why encumber yourself at this time in your career, you know? And I think it was the very fact that they found they didn't like the idea that made it attractive to me.
Yes.
Maybe it was my own way of rebelling in a sense, so perhaps I hastily married earlier than I should have. Perhaps not, I don't know.
Yes. Did you, in fact, at this time, did you always know that you'd break out of this system and become the good actor that you undeniably are in films because you got the films to prove it?
Thank you, Michael, very much. I never gave it any specific thought, you know. I was an instrument for the studio at the time. I went from picture to picture. I didn't argue with anyone. But what I needed was to create myself. I needed the experience, Michael, and I wasn't going to get it other than working in the movies. You don't get it in bed. You don't get it walking down at the beach. You don't get it lifting weights in a gym. You don't get it in an acting class. You get it in front of a camera, you know? I remember once in a movie I was working in those early color films I made, they used to use the Technicolor system. And I remember this producer coming to me and said, Tony, do you know, every time a second goes by, that's $4.50. I said, for what? He said, for the film. So you better get it right. So there were all these pressures put upon you, you know, to get your job right. And you learn to live under those kind of pressures. You know, the camera rolls and you got to be smooth and easy and pour the champagne and take the girl's brassiere and throw it over the shoulder or drive the car, you know. Yeah. While inside you're really boiling with the tension of trying to calm, and so learn these things, learn your physical sense more than anything else.
Tony Curtis, come back as often as you will, and for the moment,
you,
thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much.
Tony Curtis.
6 years later, it was Curtis's Jewish heritage being discussed on a BBC documentary series called The Golden Land.
My father was a Jew and a tailor, Hungarian, and he broke his ass all his life to make a living. And he was prejudiced against, and that has had its effect on me, you know? Whenever somebody mentioned my name Schwartz or heard the name Schwartz, it was a kind of a tension. I couldn't quite understand it for years, what that tension was, what it meant, you know? And so I avoided it, you know, because I had no feeling for it.
Now, when you go on the high days and holy days to the synagogue, do you feel anything extra and special?
I enjoy that very much. I enjoy that very much, you know? I enjoy it because I remember my father loved it. And my father loved it. And I loved him. There must be something in it that attracted him. I don't know anymore because I haven't got access to him, you know? Yeah. But I know, I can remember him standing next to me, you know, davening in the shul, you know, really, really so involved in it. And I loved him for it, you know? The inequities of being an American, coming to America at that time, not being able to make a living for his family. Yet, on those holy days, and on Friday nights, he could go into a synagogue, or early in the mornings, lay tefillin, the early morning prayer. All of a sudden, it took him out of his depression. You know, it was like shooting up. All of a sudden, he got a surge of life. He said, well, maybe today will be a little bit better, you know? And that's where religion or philosophy means a great deal, and not just Judaism, but, you know, all of the religions, you know?
And you
obviously... This Jewish mother gave her son for Christmas a blue tie and a red tie. So he shows up on Friday night with the red tie. And she says, what's the matter, you don't like the blue tie?
Well, that's right. Now, that's a good Jewish joke.
Well, you could say it as a French joke, and you don't have to be Jewish to love it. I mean, you don't have to be Jewish to love a bagel.
Did your father and your mother take pleasure, as any mother naturally would, but as particularly Jewish parents always have, out of your success here in Hollywood?
Yes. I think my mother never forgave me because I never went or married a Jewish girl.
You married out 3 times.
Well, not only the 3, but also the ones that I took out for dinner all turned out to be non-Jewish.
Shiksa is a long-time Jewish tradition, isn't it?
Well, yes, right. But, well, no, my mother wasn't that Orthodox. She wasn't that Jewish in that sense, you know. My father was.
But they enjoyed your
my
success.
Father was so pleased I went out with a nice girl, period. And everybody was so afraid everybody's son was going to grow up to be a fagler, they didn't care, you know. Yeah. She said, just go out with a girl, it's all right by me. That was that story, this 2 brothers were talking, and the one mother says, how's your son Irving? She says, well, with Irving, I got a lot of mitzvah and a lot of tzuras. Mitzvah meaning good luck and tzuras meaning trouble. She says, well, what's the mitzvah? Well, the mitzvah No, she says the tourist is he's a homosexual. But the mitzvah is he's going with a nice Jewish boy.
The playful Tony Curtis was much loved by television audiences and continued to delight the following year on the Wogan programme. But the interview also went on to explore the darker side of his life.
Good evening.
Good to see you. I mean, we haven't met before, but we have seen you quite a lot on these shows.
Yes.
Is this a kind of a place you run to every so often?
Oh, yes, I come to
here?
England a lot.
Yeah.
I like it here.
What is it about it?
Well, I like your fish and chips. I like your ladies.
Can't be the fish and chips.
Well, how about the ladies? Yeah.
Tell me about...
Yes.
As I said, looking back to those 50s and 60s,
yes.
You were the trendsetter. You were Tony Curtis. People copied you in everything you did. Were you conscious that you were setting trends?
I was unconscious. Really unconscious. I really have never planned anything, you know. Everything has always been somewhat spontaneous, and I just let it happen. I didn't try to imagine myself as a trendsetter one way or the other. I just wanted to get through the day. You know, the meaning comes after the work.
Yeah.
Life is the only way you can come to any conclusion about life is after you've lived it. People have asked me, when am I going to write
But then
it?
you're dead.
Yeah, but people have asked me to write an autobiography. I said, but I can't do it. I don't know how it's going to end.
Yes, but I mean, it'd be too late by the time.
Yeah, right. And then who would want to read it?
Well, I mean, a lot of people are writing sort of Hollywood exposés.
Oh, well, but yes. Well, I mean, Jackie Collins wrote Hollywood Wives. I've had more Hollywood Wives than she has. I mean, you know, it's crazy.
Boasting again.
Yeah, right on.
He's not like that anyway.
No.
Of course it is. He's worse.
Worse. And you, Terry, how are you?
I'm bearing up under the unequal strain. It's the throat, you know.
How many of these shows have you done so far?
Oh, shut up. They couldn't
shows?
care less about me.
No?
Just before the show started, I went down and I breathed on them and they all ran out.
It's the barber you go to.
I shouldn't have had that garlic last night.
Right.
Listen, how did you get on to talking about me? This interview is about you.
Yeah, you think so?
You.
Huh? Okay.
It's just because...
All right,
So you're not going to
it's
write...
a pleasure.
You're not going to
I'm here in England for a reason.
Yeah?
I'm going to the Cannes Film Festival next week.
That's why you're in England?
Yes. It's one way of getting there. I made a film for Nick Rogue, an English director, a very fine English director, called Insignificance, a film that was made. And it's been selected as the only British entry in the film festival. And that makes me feel really nice to think that I can be part of a British film, you know, being entered in the festival. So that's a very exciting thing for me. And the possibilities of a film like that winning an award is really a wonderful experience. So I'm on my way there.
So when you're down there, does it put a lot of pressure on you? I mean, do you have to sell the film yourself?
Well, the pressure comes from the organizing committees, where you're obligated to appear at certain functions, you know, and to get there. And then, you know, then the usual thing comes in. If some actors get more attention than others, people get very nervous. Not the actors, but the agents. And they vie amongst each other. So, you know, you have all of this kind of bickering that goes on.
When you're down there, do you ever say to yourself, here's me, the boy from the Bronx?
No, I don't.
Why not?
Well, because I didn't come from the Bronx. I came from Manhattan. And I was born and raised in Manhattan. I lived in the Bronx once, but that's...
Listen, if I'd wanted a geography lesson, I wouldn't have asked you that.
Right.
Why didn't you come from the Bronx?
Oh, yeah, right.
You ruined the whole thing there by not coming from the Bronx.
Well, you know, you've kind of put me... May I stand up for a minute? I'm going to button my jacket. You just told me something about buttoning jackets and sitting down. Getting up and down.
There's a pair of us with button jacket, but I
As
still
a matter
feel...
of fact, I think I'm going to stand up and open it again.
Yeah, but if you had come from the Bronx, you
Yes.
would have done that properly in the first place.
Right.
And now it turns out you
Now
come
I
from
forgot
Manhattan.
what
do you
I forgot
know?
what you said.
Yeah, but when you get down, did you think... Because remembering the parts that you had
Yes.
and all the rest of it, you had a very marked Bronx accent, although you came from Manhattan.
Let me say this. Living is living. From the first day you're born, the fact that you end up in the movies doesn't make you any more special than before you ended up in the movies.
Of course not.
So, you know, I don't reflect on it. Oh, poor little boy from the Bronx or Manhattan ends up a famous movie actor. To me, both are distinct, strong, and positive. One cannot forget your past, and you cannot forget your present, and you hope for the future. You know, I've learned a very important lesson. I've come through a very serious illness. I'm an alcoholic and have a drug addiction, and this really almost killed me. And I didn't know it. You know, I thought I was weak-willed, and this was what usually people thought of people who drank a lot or used drugs. But I have since found out through research that's been done in America that it's a disease. And it's a disease that you have to fight as a disease. It's an incurable disease that can be cured only by abstinence. So therefore, I thank God that I'm still alive and able to battle it and able to help as many friends as possible in that. So you see, the fact that I'm alive talking with you here, with these fine people here, that in itself is the blessing.
But also, it's full marks to you for the strength of character that
Well,
it's taken.
the character only comes from the researching, you know, and I can't spread the gospel enough. There was a time where I said, oh, it's all just rhetoric, and it's all political, you know, drinking and drugs. They're just saying that because they don't want whatever. But it's true. It is killing, and it's doing a lot of damage to a lot of young people in the world. And we all are, I feel, loath to somehow give a lift and comfort and support to as many young people as possible.
Good for you.
know.
Well, thank you for saying that.
Well, that's important.
There's just something I have to give you.
What's
a little
that?
surprise.
Oh, my God.
Even as we speak...
Where did you get that from?
I've been hiding it for some years. The old Kane
Hello.
J.R. Hatch.
Oh, blimey.
How long have you
Where
been
did this
missing
come
that?
from?
I stole it
I've
the
been
last
missing
time
it
you were
for-
over here.
No.
I nicked it from you, yes.
Did you nick it from me?
The old Kane and the hat.
Bend over.
Look at that.
Well, I'm so happy you got my stick and hat for me. Isn't that a nice
Isn't it
coat?
wonderful, yeah?
I love it. Where did you find it? Tell me.
Let that be my little
All
secret,
right,
shall we?
gee, man. What a fine show this is.
Tony Curtis,
How happy
ladies
I
and
am to
gentlemen.
be here, ladies and gentlemen.
3 years later, Curtis was back on Wogan. Having finally overcome his addiction to drink and drugs, he had a new passion to unveil.
Everybody can get a
Good evening, London.
whistle-stop tour of Europe.
Yes, kind of. I've been traveling all over the place. I was in Paris, then I went to Madrid, and here I am in London.
You forgot there for a
My
minute. You
old
forgot where you were.
hometown, London. I love this city.
You're not going to be one of those Americans who say how much you love London, are you?
Well, I do love London, and Madrid, and Paris, and any place I'm at.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you seem to have a certain joie de vivre, a joy of living.
Yes,
that
I do.
You haven't lost.
No, I hope not.
What's the secret of it?
I think the secret is keeping your mouth shut.
This is not the secret of doing a talk show.
No, really. No, I think it's, you know, it comes and goes, I have found in life. You know, the joy of living. Sometimes you lose it, sometimes you get it. It's up and down, you know. And
you've had your downs as well as your
right.
ups.
Well, once you learn, or once you appreciate how wonderful it is to be alive, it's like surfing. You know, you find the proper balance, and you kind of coast through life.
Yeah.
I would like to think so, anyway.
Yeah. Have you settled down? Are you a settled man now?
Well, maybe and maybe not.
Less of a hellraiser?
No, I'm still quite curious about everything, and I'm out there doing a lot of things.
Yeah.
But I like living, you know, and I enjoy the curiosity of what goes on in life.
What about movies? Are you going to make
Yes,
any
I
more?
do occasional movies. I'm not that interested in films. I am interested, but I'm really interested in painting now. But I tell you what I really want to do, Terry,
Yeah.
and everybody, and I think we all should enjoy this, or we all should at least expose ourselves to it, and that is traveling.
Yeah.
You know, get around a lot more than we usually do. You know, there's always some place to go. There's always something to see. There's always something to stimulate your thought, your feelings, your mind. I think trouble begins in our lives when we get too studied in our living existence, you know, where everything gets to be too patterned.
Break the pattern.
Really, I think
Break
it's
the
good
mold.
for everybody.
Yeah. Is that why you took on to be an ambassador for Los Angeles?
Yes, right. Los Angeles needs a little help.
No, it doesn't.
So they come to Tony and they
No,
say,
come on.
Tony, we're going to go all over the world and try to tell everybody to come to Los Angeles.
Why Los Angeles doesn't need anybody to
Don't you think
persuade
so?
them to go
I
to
guess
Los
not.
Angeles.
Then why did they ask me to come here?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
I mean, why?
I'm not sure. Now that you explained it that way, they told me Los Angeles needed me. Now I realize they don't. Maybe they wanted me out of town. That's probably.
Yeah, but, I mean, yeah, Los Angeles is where the sun is and where they make the movies.
Right.
But it's smog, too.
A lot of smog.
Come on now, you're the ambassador.
I'm telling you, a lot of smog.
You're being
But
too honest.
don't let a little thing like smog stop you. London's got smog.
It hasn't. We got no
It
smog.
doesn't.
It's the Clean Air
You've
Act.
got to be kidding.
No, it's only in American
This
movies.
is El Smogville.
There's no smog in London.
What do you mean there's no smog?
The smog
Open
went-
the door. It'll walk right
No,
in.
that's the smoke from Bananarama.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
See, that's how a kid from London talks and how a kid from LA talks. Right?
Yeah, but I mean, is it part of your duty to, as it were, clean up the LA image? You know, the pictures we get from the movies of the gangs and all the rest of it.
Well, there are gangs, of course.
It's a violent city?
It is a violent city. It has all of these elements to it. It is America, and it's as far west as you can go. It's like the early West, you know? And that's part of the, I feel, the excitement and the interest in Los Angeles. There's a lot of wonderful things in that city, you know? There's unique places, wonderful museums, Venice, down at Venice Beach, a beautiful little community, you know?
Do you live there?
I live in Los Angeles. I have a condominium in Bel Air, or not in Bel Air, but near it. And I live in Hawaii. That's where I make my primary residence now.
So you can go further west and Los
Oh,
Angeles.
well, you can go to
Hawaii.
Honolulu, yes. And that's
Yeah.
where I live in Honolulu. And I spend a lot of time in Los Angeles. I spend a lot of time all over now.
Yeah.
I want to just travel and see all the good-looking girls all over
You're
the
not
place.
still doing that. You're not still at that.
I'm not?
I thought we were going to see a reformed
Yes,
man
reformed
here.
and
a
yes,
man
right.
who had eschewed
Yes.
the demon drink, the women.
Yes, well, drink will kill you, so I don't drink. Drugs will kill you, I don't use drugs. You know, I've changed my life in that sense. I'm a recovering alcoholic and a drug abuse person, and so I don't use those substances, you know. I'm almost 5 years in my recovery, and that's a very important part of
Yeah.
my living experience.
Is that getting easier to do?
Well, I don't know what you mean by easier.
Well,
I
you
mean,
know, I
I
know
have
it.
no desire, no need to. But you know, that's come, Terry, and perhaps my English friends will understand it. It comes from therapy. It comes from examining your whole living experience and how you approach your life. It takes a bit of doing. But once it's done, okay, it is truly the joy of the living experience.
Was the painting a therapy?
A painting is a very helpful experience for me. But you know, as soon as you begin to reclaim your life, a lot of gifts that you have as a person start to emerge. You become more of a loving person. Yeah, more of a giving person. You find little gifts that you had maybe when a kid, you can now, encourage painting, writing.
We've got 3 of your paintings
Yes,
over there.
maybe go over and
By a
look at them.
strange and wonderful coincidence.
Well, isn't it I'm going to get a
Walk
chance to
the
show.
paintings.
Okay, let me see
Okay,
now.
now look. These are not the paintings. Those
No.
are covers.
Now,
Come on.
all right.
Come on this side.
Well, no, the first one we're going to look
What?
at is this one.
Just a minute. We haven't rehearsed. Why didn't we rehearse this? No, I want to look
No,
at that.
you're gonna
Oh,
look
all
at
right.
it.
Then I'm going to look at the
On
one.
this side.
One in
Here,
the middle.
Take the end of this, and
Okay.
we'll lift this up.
Careful.
Okay, here.
Now,
Let's turn
steady.
this up. Okay.
Now,
Step back and let everybody see the painting.
have a look at the painting. What's it called? This?
I don't know what is this called?
Just a minute.
Goodbye, Charlie, it's called. No, it's called Flowers, and I don't know what I don't name them, but this is a painting is about a year old now. I put on the paint, as you see, quite thick.
Yeah.
I like the composition and the way colors work against each other. And perhaps that's what Hawaii gives me now, because I paint the colors. I don't paint particularly Hawaiian, Terry. I mean, I don't paint grass skirts and palm trees as much. But the colors are very reminiscent
And of course,
it.
it's very bright there.
Yes.
Tell me, how much would this cost?
I
What
think
price are you putting on
The gallery puts a price of about 20,000 quid.
this?
Hello. Oh, blimey. Come on over here. Good. All right.
Well, we'll
now
get
this,
bids. We'll take bids in
this
just a
is
moment.
Here, let me show you this one.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
Now, this is entirely different.
This is a little bit of an abstract concept and version. Again, it's the colors that I like so much, and the shapes and sizes, so it gives you an idea.
How much would the gallery put on
Well,
it?
for you, my dear friend, it'll cost you a Bentley. Do you have a Bentley?
No.
Yeah, what kind of a car do you drive?
Something very small
What?
and simple.
What kind of a car do you drive?
I don't drive anything. I got banned.
Oh, I got him, didn't I? All right. No, we only got a minute.
I got.
Come on down here, Terry. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is about the late. This is only about 3 weeks old. Let me just show you this one. You can see
A woman's
different...
side there, that's your favorite, isn't it?
So you see there's other colors I use. I think
you
it's,
use
for
all
me,
the
it's
colours,
really
yeah.
appealing that you can see different times in your life and the way you feel, express yourself in a different way of painting.
Yeah.
I didn't know you were banned from driving. What? Come here. Where are you going? All right, I won't bring that up if you won't bring up any of my ex-wives.
All right. It's a deal. Tony Curtis. Wonderful. He's a good man. Nice to have him back. He'll come back anytime.
I will, thank you.
With or without the paintings. Now, among our delights next week, you'll be sorry you won't.
Go on,
are you staying?
go on, keep going.
We have a special program with Cliff Richard.
And of course, next Friday, the Children in Need appeal. Happy weekend, and I'll be seeing you on Monday at 7. Terry Wogan here.